She was 47 years old and she had forgotten how to wait. In boardrooms, Victoria Sinclair spoke first or lost ground. In negotiations, hesitation cost millions. In marriage, well, her marriage had ended 3 months ago, and the last thing her ex-husband said still echoed in her chest like a wound that refused to heal. "You never waited for anything, Victoria. Not for me. Not for us. Not even for the children we never had." Tonight, she sat alone in a small cafe on Maple Street, watching snowflakes gather on the window ledge. The coffee in front of her had gone cold. Christmas lights blinked red and gold through frosted glass, casting soft patterns across the worn wooden tables. She had been here for nearly an hour, and everyone thought she'd been stood up. The barista, a young man with kind eyes and a flannel shirt, brought her a second cup. Free. His expression said everything. Pity, sympathy, the particular compassion reserved for women dining alone on Christmas Eve. Victoria wrapped her hands around the ceramic mug. At least it was warm. At the next table, a couple whispered behind their menus. She caught fragments. Poor thing. Stood up. Christmas Eve, of all nights. She should leave. Every instinct screamed at her to stand up, walk out, and return to the penthouse where at least the silence was familiar. But something kept her in that chair. Victoria thought about Richard, about the divorce papers she'd signed while the city glittered 40 floors below, about the way he'd looked at her in the end, not with anger, but with exhaustion, the look of a man who had finally stopped trying. "You chose your company over our family," he'd said, every single time. He was right. She had chosen work over dinners, over vacations, over the quiet moments that build a life together. And by the time she realized what she'd lost, there was nothing left to save. The children were the worst of it. She'd wanted them desperately, but Richard hadn't been ready, and she'd been patient. And then suddenly she was 42, and he was finally ready, and her body had given a different answer. The doctors used words like unlikely and challenging, and you might consider other options. Richard had looked at her differently after that, like she'd failed him somehow. Now, at 47, Victoria ran a $2 billion investment firm. She had a penthouse that echoed when she walked through it. She had success, respect, power. And she ate dinner alone every night. Her phone buzzed, a text from her assistant. "Hartley wants to move the call to tonight, 9 p.m. Can you make it?" A $50 million deal. She should go. But Rachel's voice echoed in her mind. Her best friend, the one who'd arranged this blind date. "You've spent 30 years building an empire, Vic. What did it cost you? And was it worth it?" Victoria silenced her phone. She checked the time. 8:05 p.m. She had been waiting for nearly 50 minutes. Logic demanded she leave. Pride insisted upon it. But something held her there. Something that felt like the first honest thing she'd done in years. And then the door opened. Cold air rushed in. Snow swirled across the threshold. And with it came a man who looked like he'd been through war. His jacket was soaked through, clinging to his shoulders in dark patches. His jeans were splattered with slush. His hair, dark, slightly too long, was plastered against his forehead. He stood in the doorway for a moment, chest heaving, scanning the room with desperate eyes. When his gaze found hers, Victoria saw something she hadn't expected. Relief. Pure, unguarded relief. He crossed the cafe in quick strides, leaving wet footprints on the hardwood floor. Up close, Victoria could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the redness around his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. He smelled faintly of antiseptic, hospital antiseptic. "You're still here." Victoria studied him, this man who looked nothing like someone she should be waiting for. His clothes were worn, his boots were scuffed. His watch was a simple digital thing that probably cost less than her morning coffee, but his eyes were kind, tired and kind, and carrying something heavy. "I'm still here," she said. He collapsed into the chair across from her, then immediately straightened. "I'm so sorry, I'm Michael. Michael Brennan. I'm 44 years old and I fix pipes for a living, and I just—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "There was an emergency. My mother. She fell on the ice outside our building. I was at the ER for 3 hours. They think it's her hip." His voice cracked. "She's 71. She lives with us, with me and my daughter. And my little girl was alone while I was at the hospital, and I tried to text you, but the signal was terrible. And Victoria reached across the table. Her hand covered his, rough calluses against smooth skin. Is she okay? Your mother? Michael looked at their hands, then at her face. Surprise flickered in his eyes. Surprised that she'd asked about his mother before asking why he was late. They're keeping her overnight for observation. My neighbor is watching Lily, my daughter. She's 7. Then why are you here? Michael laughed, a broken sound. Because my mother told me to come. From her hospital bed, with an IV in her arm, she grabbed my hand and said, he stopped, shook his head. Snow was melting in his hair. She said if a woman waits that long on Christmas Eve, she's either a fool or she's special. And Mom wanted to know which one you are. Victoria felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the wall she'd built around herself. Which one am I? Michael looked at her, really looked, and Victoria felt the full weight of his attention, not invasive, but careful, like he was trying to see past the designer coat to whatever lay beneath. I don't know yet, he said, but you waited. So maybe… He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Outside, the snow fell harder. Inside, 2 strangers sat across from each other, and for reasons neither fully understood, neither one wanted to leave. The barista brought Michael water. Just water. Victoria noticed how his eyes skipped over the menu prices. She ordered him a sandwich anyway, turkey and Swiss. He didn't protest. They talked. Carefully at first, then less so. The cafe emptied around them. The Christmas lights outside blurred into soft halos through the frost. At 44, Michael Brennan had lived enough for 2 lifetimes. He'd been an architect once, designed custom homes, beautiful spaces where families could grow and children could play. I used to create spaces where people could be happy, he said, staring into his water glass. Now I fix other people's pipes. His wife, Sarah, had died 3 years ago. Cancer, the kind that announces itself too late and leaves too soon. The medical bills had buried everything. The savings, the house, the career he'd spent a decade building. Plumbing pays better than entry-level architecture, Michael explained, and I could start right away. So I did. He said it without self-pity, like a man who had made peace with his sacrifices. Victoria found herself sharing too. The divorce, the empty penthouse. The morning she woke up and forgot, just for a moment, that there was no one beside her. No children, she said, and the words came out steady even though her throat burned. It didn't happen for us. Michael didn't push. He just nodded, like he understood that some wounds weren't ready to be shown. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his whole face transformed, softening into something tender. Lily, he said. He answered. Victoria heard a small voice on the other end, tired, scared. Daddy, when are you coming home? Mrs. Patterson smells like cats. Michael's laugh was gentle. Soon, baby. Is the lady there? The one Grandma talked about? Yeah, she's here. Silence. Then small and sharp. I don't want to meet her. Victoria saw Michael's face fall. Lily, Mommy said you don't need anyone else. Mommy said our family's enough. The line went dead. Michael stared at his phone. When he looked up, Victoria saw something raw in his eyes. Exhaustion and grief and love so fierce it hurt to witness. I'm sorry, and he said quietly. She's not usually. She's just scared and tired, and she misses her mom. She's protecting you, Victoria said. That's not a bad thing. Michael looked at her with surprise, gratitude, the beginning of something neither had names for. Most people would have made an excuse to leave by now. I'm not most people. They left the cafe together. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the city in white. Michael offered to walk her to her car. Victoria didn't tell him she'd taken a taxi. Instead, she walked beside him through the quiet streets, past storefronts decorated with lights, past windows glowing with family warmth. Can I ask you something? Michael said. Go ahead. Why did you really wait? A woman like you could be anywhere. Why a blind date with a plumber on Christmas Eve? Victoria considered lying. But she was tired of easy. Because I'm 47 years old, she said slowly, and I've spent my whole life running, building, achieving. 3 months ago, I woke up in a penthouse that cost more than most people make in a lifetime, and I realized I had no one to share it with. She stopped walking, looked at him. I waited because I'm tired of being ahead and completely alone. Michael didn't say anything. He just reached out and took her hand. When they reached his building, red brick, white shutters, Victoria stopped. Michael, how much did Rachel tell you about me? He froze just for a second. Rachel told me you were successful. She didn't say how successful, but you knew. I figured it out. The coat, the watch. He paused. Victoria, if you think I showed up because of your money, that's not what I'm asking. She looked at him. I'm asking if you're here because you see me, or because you see what I represent. Michael stepped closer. Victoria, I showed up late to a blind date because my mother broke her hip and my daughter was crying, and everything in my life is held together with duct tape and prayers. I'm not here because of what you represent. He took her hand again. I'm here because you waited, and I wanted to know what kind of person does that. The apartment was small but warm. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, covered in homemade ornaments, construction paper snowflakes, popsicle stick reindeer, a foil star on top. The smell of cinnamon hung in the air. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly neighbor, left with a tired wave. And there, on the couch wrapped in a blanket, was Lily, 7 years old, dark hair like her father, eyes that held too much knowing for someone so young. She looked at Victoria and didn't smile. Hi, Victoria said softly, kneeling. I'm Victoria. I know who you are. The words were flat, not rude, just careful. The words of a child who had learned that new people meant change, and change meant loss. Your dad told me you weren't feeling well. I'm not sick. Grandma's sick. Lily's chin lifted. I'm taking care of Daddy. Victoria's heart cracked. This tiny, fierce child, carrying a weight no 7-year-old should know. That's very brave of you. Lily's eyes narrowed. Are you going to stay? Victoria glanced at Michael. I don't know yet. Is that okay? Daddy doesn't need someone who doesn't know. She turned back to the TV, dismissing Victoria entirely. Later in the kitchen, Michael made tea. His hands were steadier now. I'm sorry about Lily. She's been through a lot. Don't apologize, she's protecting her family. Michael was quiet. Then, Victoria, there's something I need to tell you. She waited. My wife, Sarah. Before she got sick, she worked in finance. Entry level. He paused. She worked at Sinclair Capital. Victoria's blood ran cold. What? 5 years ago, she was a junior analyst. She got let go during layoffs. Michael's eyes searched hers. 6 months later, she was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. Victoria's mind raced. 5 years ago, the restructuring, the list of names she'd approved without looking twice. Michael, I'm not telling you this to blame you. I didn't even know until tonight. He ran a hand through his hair. I almost didn't come. Why did you? Because my mother told me something before the ambulance arrived. He looked at her. She said, Michael, that woman who fired Sarah might be the same woman who teaches you to live again. Life is strange like that. Victoria didn't know what to say. I don't remember her, Victoria whispered. Sarah. I don't remember her name. I know. That makes it worse. I know. They baked cookies anyway, because Lily was watching from the couch and Michael had promised her. Victoria cracked eggs badly. Michael measured flour precisely. Lily directed from her blanket throne, her hostility slowly thawing. More sugar, Daddy. Miss Victoria, you have to mix faster. That's not a ball, that's a blob. By the time the first batch emerged, misshapen, slightly burned, something had shifted. Lily wasn't smiling, but she wasn't glaring either. These are ugly, Lily announced. They're perfect, Michael said. Lily looked at Victoria. Do you think they're perfect? Victoria took a bite. Too sweet, slightly raw in the middle. I think they're exactly what they need to be. Mommy always said that, about things that weren't perfect. The kitchen fell silent. Near midnight, Victoria excused herself to the bathroom. She stared at her reflection, mascara smudge, flour on her blouse. She looked like someone she didn't recognize, someone softer. Her phone buzzed, a text from her assistant. Hartley deal is dead. They went with Morrison. $50 million. Gone. Then another text, from a number she'd blocked. Richard. Rachel told me about your little Christmas adventure. A plumber. Really, Victoria? This is pathetic. Something broke inside her. Not because of Richard's cruelty, but because standing in this tiny apartment, Victoria realized she didn't belong here. She was a woman who fired people without learning their names. A woman who chose work over family until her husband stopped asking. She slipped out the front door without saying goodbye. The cold hit her like a slap. Snow soaked through her shoes. She made it halfway down the block before she heard it. A small voice, high and desperate. Miss Victoria, wait! She turned. Lily, barefoot, wearing only pajamas, running through the snow. Lily! Victoria ran back, pulling off her coat, wrapping it around the shivering child. What are you doing? Lily's teeth chattered, but her eyes were fierce. You left, without saying goodbye. I had to go. No, you didn't. Lily's voice cracked. You left because I was mean to you. Lily, but I was lying. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Daddy does need someone. He cries at night when he thinks I'm asleep. He talks to Mommy's picture. And Grandma says he's been waiting for someone. But he's too scared. Victoria knelt in the snow. I wasn't leaving because of you, sweetheart. Then why? Because I was scared. Scared that I'm not good enough. That I don't know how to be part of a family. Lily pulled back, looked at her with those wise eyes. Mommy used to say being scared means something matters. She wiped her nose with Victoria's coat sleeve. Do we matter? Victoria's throat closed. Yes, you matter. More than you know. Then come back, please. Part 4, Coming Home. They walked back together, Lily's small hand in hers. Michael stood in the doorway, wild-eyed with relief. He didn't yell. He just pulled them both inside, wrapped Lily in warm towels, made hot chocolate with too many marshmallows. When Lily finally fell asleep on the couch, Michael sat beside Victoria. She told me why you left. She's very perceptive for 7. She's had to be. He looked at his hands. Victoria, I don't care about the money. I don't care about Sinclair Capital. What I care about is that you came back. Lily made me. No, Lily asked you. You chose to come back. There's a difference. A knock at the door interrupted them. Michael opened it to find Mrs. Patterson supporting an older woman on crutches. Silver hair, sharp eyes, a hospital bracelet still on her wrist. Grace Brennan had discharged herself early. Christmas Eve, she told the nurses. No one should spend it in a hospital. She hobbled inside, her gaze immediately finding Victoria. So, Grace said, her voice cool, you're the one who kept my son out past midnight. Victoria stood. Mrs. Brennan, I'm so glad you're... I know who you are. Grace settled into the armchair, wincing slightly. Victoria Sinclair, CEO, Billionaire. The woman who fired half her company 5 years ago. The room went silent. Mom, Michael warned. Don't mom me. Grace's eyes never left Victoria. I spent 3 hours in an emergency room tonight, had plenty of time to think, and I thought about my son and my granddaughter and how they've already lost one person they loved. Victoria didn't look away. I understand. Do you? Grace leaned forward. My daughter-in-law was one of the kindest people I ever knew. She worked 60-hour weeks at your company, trying to prove herself. And then one day, she got an email, not even a phone call, an email telling her she was no longer needed. Mom, stop. 6 months later, she was in a hospital bed, different kind, and I watched my son hold her hand while she... Grace's voice broke. She steadied herself. So forgive me if I'm not impressed by designer coats and fancy watches? Victoria nodded slowly. You shouldn't be. Grace blinked. What? You're right. About all of it. Victoria sat down across from her. I don't remember Sarah's name. I approved layoffs without looking at faces. I built a company and lost everything that mattered in the process. She paused. I'm not here to replace your daughter-in-law. I couldn't. I wouldn't try. Grace studied her. The silence stretched. Then why are you here? Victoria glanced at Michael, at Lily, sleeping peacefully. At this small apartment filled with homemade ornaments and love. Because I waited for your son tonight, and he showed up. And I think, she swallowed, I think maybe that's the beginning of something, if you'll let it be. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. Sarah wrote Michael a letter before she died, made him promise not to read it until he was ready. She looked at her son. You opened it 6 months ago. You told me what it said. Michael nodded slowly. He walked to a drawer, pulled out an envelope, handed it to Victoria. Sarah wrote this for whoever came next. I think she'd want you to read it. Victoria opened the letter. The handwriting was neat, precise, the handwriting of someone who knew time was running out. My dearest Michael, if you're reading this, it means you're finally ready. I'm so proud of you. I know you'll blame yourself for moving on. You'll think you're betraying me or Lily or some promise you made. But here's the truth. The only betrayal would be closing your heart forever. Lily needs a father who knows how to love, not just her, but someone else. She needs to see that love doesn't end when we lose someone. It grows, it changes, it makes room for more. So here's my last request. Find someone who knows how to wait. Someone who understands that you're worth the patience. Someone who will love Lily not as a replacement for me, but as an addition to everything I couldn't give her. You deserve to be happy, Michael. And whoever she is, tell her thank you. Thank you for waiting. All my love. Forever, Sarah. Victoria's hands trembled. She knew, Victoria whispered. She knew someone would wait for you. Grace wiped her eyes. Sarah was always smarter than all of us. Michael moved to Victoria's side, took her hand. Stay, he said. Not just tonight. Stay. Victoria looked at Grace, who gave a small, grudging nod. I suppose, Grace said, anyone who can survive my granddaughter in pajamas and my interrogation in the same night deserves a chance. Christmas morning arrived soft and golden. Victoria woke on the couch. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The smell of coffee filled the air. Lily sat by the Christmas tree holding something carefully. Miss Victoria, you stayed. I stayed. Lily crawled onto the couch, handed Victoria a cookie wrapped in plastic, heart-shaped, red frosting, wobbly letters. Thank you for coming back. Victoria held the cookie, held Lily, and finally let herself cry. Why are you sad? Lily asked. I'm not sad. I'm happy. Happy crying is weird. Yeah, it really is. Grace emerged from Michael's room. He'd slept on the floor so his mother could have the bed. She made her way to the couch on her crutches, settling beside them. Room for one more? Lily immediately snuggled against her grandmother. Victoria found herself sandwiched between generations she barely knew. And somehow, it felt right. Michael appeared with coffee. 4 cups. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. 6 months later, a hospital room, but not like before. Victoria lay in the bed, exhausted but radiant. Her hair was a mess. Her makeup was long gone. She had never looked more beautiful. Michael sat beside her, holding something small wrapped in blue. He's perfect, Michael whispered. He's a miracle, Victoria said. The doctors said at 48, it was almost impossible. But here he was, Benjamin Michael Brennan. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair like his father. Lily climbed carefully onto the bed. What's his name? Benjamin. We're calling him Ben. Why Ben? Michael smiled. Your mom, your first mom, once told me that new beginnings deserve new names. The door opened. Grace hobbled in, her hip mostly healed now, using only a cane. Let me see my grandson. Michael placed Benjamin in his grandmother's arms. Grace looked down at the tiny face, and for the first time since Victoria had known her, the sharp edges softened completely. He has Sarah's nose, Grace said quietly. Then she looked at Victoria. And your stubbornness, probably. Heaven help us all. Victoria laughed through her tears. Grace settled into the chair beside the bed. Benjamin cradled against her chest. You know, Grace said, I wasn't sure about you. That first night, I thought you were just another rich woman who'd get bored and break my son's heart. I know. But then you came back. And you kept coming back. Every Sunday dinner, every school play, every time Lily had a nightmare and needed someone, Grace looked at her. Sarah's letter said to find someone who knew how to wait. I think she'd be glad it was you. In the corner of the room on the windowsill sat a framed letter in faded handwriting. Sarah's letter, watching over them all. Lily peered at her new brother. He looked squishy. Everyone laughed. And in that small hospital room, surrounded by family, some by blood, some by choice, Victoria Sinclair finally understood what she'd been waiting for all along. She had waited nearly 50 minutes on Christmas Eve for a stranger who showed up late, soaking wet, carrying the weight of the world. She didn't know then that those minutes would become the most important of her life. She didn't know that waiting wasn't weakness. It was the first act of love. Some people spend their whole lives running toward success, only to realize they've been running away from home. Victoria stopped running at 47. She stopped measuring her worth in deals closed and dollars earned. She stopped believing she was too old, too broken, too far gone for second chances. And she found what she'd been waiting for: a family, a purpose, a place to belong. Not because she deserved it, but because she was brave enough to stay. In the end, that's what love is. Showing up every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard.